a pollutant, a threat to human health. They have empowered the EPA to issue orders, mandates, regulations, controls, and fines which will be put in place and enforced even without a vote of Congress. Unelected officials declaring themselves as having this enormous power over us. This bypassing the authority of Congress is a manifestation of tyranny. I don't care if they think that they are saving the world. This is tyranny. If there are changes in the law that are required by some climate theory, let us debate them. Have an honest debate. Let's not impose this on the American people without having elected officials be held accountable for that decision. And of course, we know now the theories that we're talking about are all based on the cookbooks and phony science, which makes it all even worse. So now on to challenge number 4, which focuses on the accuracy of the statistics being used to justify man-made global warming. Importantly, the alarmists are raising the alarmists who are raising all of this ruckus. They're doing it about less than 1 degree of an increase in the global temperature. So we hear all of this ruckus, but it's only increased even by what they're claiming less than 1 degree, or just about 1 degree over 150 years. So small inaccuracies, when you talk about 1 degree over 150 years, small inaccuracies can have huge implications to this process. Well, an investigation has found that accuracy problems with 80% of America's National Weather Service stations, which collected the data here in the United States. And worse, our system, even with 80% of the stations not meeting reliable standards, and we've been heralded as the best in the world. Well, what about the statistics gathered in the rest of the world, in the developing countries and in other countries? What about the statistics that were gathered here and abroad 100 years ago or 150 years ago? Does anyone have faith in those figures? Remember, that's what was fed into the computer. Let's remember also, garbage in, garbage out is a truism when it comes to computers. The whole basis for this so-called irrefutable evidence of global warming rests on computer models that were based on data collected from faulty systems. Perhaps, just as troubling, the data fed into those computers is no longer available for reassessment. Yep, the data was deleted by the research institutes. Deleted just like they talked about in these hacked emails. And a close reading of the recently exposed emails reveal that alterations were made in the raw data being fed into computers. They were called adjustments of the data. In short, they cooked the books. And that data is no longer available. It was deleted by the research institutes and cannot be looked over again for accuracy. Oh, well, I guess we should just trust them. Fortunately, the ground-based sensors that fed those infamous computer models are not the only source of temperature data. Information is also available from research and observation satellites and weather balloons. And you guessed it, that source is in conflict with the ground-based data. Of course, no one is certain of that because all of this we're talking about was the data before adjustments were made and before it was all deleted. So how is this for a scientific challenge? Defend the scientific integrity of the man-made global warming data collection process. It's got more holes in it than a spaghetti strainer. And this man-made global warming theory is the greatest scam in history. This, of course, is only one of many scams designed to frighten us into accepting draconian solutions for fictitious problems. Remember when I was a kid, they said cranberries cause cancer. 2 years later, after the cranberry industry was decimated, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. Then you remember cyclamates were supposedly causing cancer. That cost American industry hundreds of millions of dollars. It destroyed a sugar substitute which was perfectly fine, and it ended up getting America and perhaps the rest of the world hooked on high fructose corn syrup, only to be found out later on that cyclamates do not are not carcinogenic at all. And in fact, Canada never banned them at all. And now its cyclamates are free to be consumed here in the United States. Well, then we remember Dr. Meryl Streep, a prominent scientist and movie actress, who warned us about Alar, only to find out that was fictitious. We remember 3 Mile Island and Jane Fonda, a presentation which stopped the building of nuclear power plants and made us even more dependent on foreign oil. So what did we do? We now depend more on oil and coal for our electricity because Jane Fonda created the impression that nuclear energy was not safe. And then during the Reagan administration, there was a furor about acid rain, which was presented to us again with a phony baseline. They said that the lakes in the Northeast and everything were becoming more acidic, and they used as their baseline a time immediately in the years that were after a massive number of fires in that area turned those lakes into a base, and thus the acidity was not the natural acidity that they that they normally were at, and they were going back to that natural acidity. It was a phony baseline, and it totally distorted the so-called problem. The topper of them all, many of the very same gang, now agonizing over man-made global warming, they were the same people who were warning us with similar intensity about the coming ice age. And then, of course, we have to remember there's a big price to pay for all of this. Big price to pay for lies. Like, for example, the report that bird shells were thinning, which resulted in a global ban on DDT. Millions of children in the third world have subsequently lost their lives to malaria because of that ban. Apparently, birds were more important than to those who made policy than those millions of poor and struggling children in the third world who lost their lives to malaria, a disease that we had controlled before we banned DDT. The cap-and-trade bill, rammed through the House by deceit and alarmist propaganda, awaits the U.S. Senate. If it becomes law, as I said on the floor of the debate, our economy will go to hell and our jobs will go to China. And yes, it will affect all of us big time. And that's what this is all about, changing our lives big time. What are some of the long-term changes these steely-eyed fanatics behind cap and trade and global warming and behind the Copenhagen gathering want to make in our lives? It's a long run, but here's some of the things they want. They want gas to at least double in price, probably triple, maybe more. Parking prices need to go up. Parking permits need to go way up. Air travel will be out of reach for ordinary people by elimination of frequent flyer miles and discount tickets and simply dramatically rising the price of airplane tickets. Only the rich and powerful in their private jets and limousines will be free to travel as they please. Yes, there will be restrictions on our diet. Embedded in the man-made global warming movement is a contingent of power freaks who want to restrict our meat consumption by limiting production. This is based on the idea that methane from cow flatulence threatens the stability of the planet's climate. This is insane. So hamburgers are out, much less backyard barbecues. The prices of electricity, just like every energy source, would be pushed to sky high, as will the price of almost everything that we consume, because everything manufactured or farmed depends on energy. The goal is to put limits on human activity, especially human consumption. To these fanatics, anything used or consumed that is not essential is a waste of resources. Ronald Reagan used to say about this crowd, they won't be satisfied till we're all living in a bird's nest. So why is Congress on the verge of passing this monstrous legislation which will bolster the competitiveness of China and India while undercutting our own economy and our way of life? This is a product of a radical environmentalist globalist coalition. They want to build a whole new world based on benevolent control by people like themselves. They have a vision of a harmonious and balanced world, and they don't mind scaring us into accepting it or imposing it upon us. And that's where the real threat comes in. This is not just the EPA pushing democracy aside to centralize power and controls in Washington, D.C., which is in and of itself contrary to what America is supposed to be all about.